There's a part of you that you avoid looking at. Not because it doesn't exist, but because it threatens the image you've built of who you believe you are. Jung called this part the shadow. And as long as you keep pretending it doesn't exist, it will keep making decisions for you, silently, behind the scenes, influencing your impulses, your relationships, your fears, and even what you call destiny. Most people believe they know themselves. They know what they like, what they dislike, what they approve of, and what they condemn. But Jung showed that this is only the surface of the psyche. What you accept in yourself forms the ego. What you reject, repress, or deem unacceptable is pushed into the shadow. And here's the crucial point. The shadow doesn't disappear. It merely changes shape. The more you try to be only good, correct, strong, or evolved, the more energy you give to what you repress. The shadow grows in darkness. And when it's not acknowledged, it manifests in distorted ways, in emotional outbursts, in excessive judgments, in behaviors you don't understand, in choices that seem to go against your conscious values. Jung observed that many people become prisoners of a persona, a social mask, carefully crafted to please, adapt, and be accepted. This persona is necessary. But when you over-identify with it, everything that doesn't fit that image is cast out of consciousness. Anger becomes moralism. Envy becomes disdain. Desire becomes guilt. Fear becomes control. And the shadow begins to act through compensation. Have you noticed how certain people irritate you deeply for no clear reason? How some behaviors in others trigger disproportionate reactions in you? Jung would say that, often, what bothers you most in others is something you don't accept in yourself. The unrecognized shadow is projected. You don't see the other as they are. You see in them what you can't bear to see in yourself. But don't be mistaken. The shadow isn't made only of negative impulses. It also holds potentials, strengths, desires, and talents that were repressed throughout life. Maybe you learned early on that being sensitive was weakness, or that showing ambition was wrong, or that expressing anger made you lose love. These parts were silenced, and today you may feel a void, a sense of unlived life, without knowing exactly why. Jung said that no one becomes enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. This isn't an invitation to chaos. It's an invitation to integration. Because what you don't integrate, you act out. And what you act out, you don't control. The unintegrated shadow appears in moments of stress, fatigue, frustration, and loss of control. It's when you say things you regret, when you make impulsive decisions, when you distance yourself from those you love without fully understanding why. There's a dangerous illusion common in personal development, the idea of eliminating the dark side. Jung was radically against this. For him, psychic wholeness doesn't come from exclusion, but from conscious inclusion. You don't become whole by denying parts of yourself, but by recognizing they exist, understanding their origin, and learning to dialogue with them. The shadow is largely formed in childhood. To be loved, you learn what you can and cannot feel, what you can and cannot desire, what you can and cannot express. Everything that threatens the bond is repressed. But the child doesn't stop feeling. They just learn to hide. The adult carries this unconscious agreement throughout life, until the conflict begins to demand its price. Maybe you see yourself as calm, but explode at certain moments. Maybe you see yourself as rational, but make clearly emotional decisions. Maybe you see yourself as independent, but live independent relationships. These contradictions aren't moral failures. They're signs of unintegrated parts asking for recognition. Jung believed that the individuation process, the true path of psychological maturation, begins when the individual has the courage to abandon the fantasy of perfection. As long as you try to uphold an idealized image of yourself, you live divided. A conscious part trying to maintain control and an unconscious part sabotaging in silence. The shadow doesn't want to destroy you. It wants to exist. Ignoring the shadow doesn't make you more evolved. It makes you more unconscious. And the more unconscious someone is, the more they believe their actions are purely rational. That's the paradox. True awareness begins when you admit, I am not only what I approve of in myself, I am also what I deny. And here's a point few have the courage to admit. Many choices you call mistakes are attempts by the shadow to express itself. Not in the best way, but in the only way possible when it's not heard. Jung observed that the psyche seeks balance. If the ego pulls too far, in one direction, the unconscious pulls in the other, not to punish but to compensate. That's why overly controlled people end up losing control. Overly moral people end up in situations that contradict their values. People who repress aggression end up attracting aggressive environments. The shadow always finds a way out. The question isn't whether it will manifest, but how. Integrating the shadow doesn't mean acting on every impulse. It means recognizing them without blind judgment. It means asking, what does this part want? What is it protecting me from? What is it trying to compensate for? When you do this, something changes. The energy once used for repression transforms into awareness. And awareness expands choice. Jung said that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Think about this honestly. How many things do you call bad luck, patterns, or just the way I am that may simply be expressions of your unrecognized shadow? While you fight against it, it grows stronger. When you listen to it, it transforms. This is the turning point. Because integrating the shadow doesn't make you worse. It makes you more real. Less fragmented, less hostage to automatic impulses. More whole. The integrated shadow doesn't dominate, it cooperates. It becomes a source of vitality, assertiveness, creativity, and authenticity. Maybe now you're feeling discomfort. That's a good sign. Jung believed that what challenges us most emotionally is precisely where the greatest potential for growth lies. The shadow isn't an enemy. It's an exiled part waiting to be recognized. You don't need to hate yourself to evolve. You need to see yourself. Without psychological makeup, without pretty narratives, without preonlilaichi. Maturity begins when you can look at yourself without abandoning who you are. If this video made you reflect, if any part of it resonated within you, write in the comments. I'm ready to integrate my shadow. Like the video, it helps the channel grow. Subscribe to continue this journey of deep self-knowledge based on Jung, Freud, and applied depth psychology. Because the more you understand who you are as a whole, the less your shadow needs to speak for you.